Let's open our Bibles and read together. We've been going through the Psalms and we've made our way to Psalm 5. And some scholars believe Psalm 5 is written during the time of Absalom's rebellion, where he'd run David out of Jerusalem. He would seize his power, set on his throne, and despite Absalom's rebellion, David would tell his men not to harm him. Because if God wanted another king, then that was up to God. That was God's business, not his. And so David is this refugee. He's surrounded by his enemies. He's been turned on by his own nation. Can I say this? I think as Christians, we understand a thing or two about this. We've gone from Christianity being something that used to be revered to something that's reviled. They're okay with us being Christians as long as we don't speak out about it or stand up for it. And so how do we live in a nation like that? Well, let's read Psalm 5. I think there's some helpful things. Begin there in verse 1. Give ear to my words, O Lord, consider my meditation. Give heed to the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For to you I will pray. My voice you shall hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning I will direct it to you, and I will look up. For you are not a God who takes pleasure in wickedness, nor shall evil dwell with you. The boastful shall not stand in your sight. You hate all workers of iniquity. You shall destroy those who speak falsehood. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into your house in the multitude of your mercy. In fear of you, I will worship towards your holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your way straight before my face. For there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is destruction. Their throat is an open tomb. They flatter with their tongue. Pronounce them guilty, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against you. But let all those rejoice who put their trust in you. Let them ever shout for joy because you defend them. Let those who love your name be joyful in you. For you, O Lord, will bless the righteous. With favor you will surround him as with a shield. Notice how this psalm begins there in verse 3. He says, my King and my God. Now think about that for a minute. Who was the king? Wasn't David the rightful king of Israel, no matter what Absalom was doing? And yet this king had a king. David recognized that he was only king because God let him be king. And like David, we need to recognize who the real king is. Jesus is our God and our king. And Paul would often remind Timothy of that. He'd call him the King of Kings. Think about who the king may have been during that period of time, like Nero. And despite his wickedness, there was a king that ruled over that king. Like our king rules over the other kings and the other nations. When we submit to the governing authorities, they're not really our king. Like Jesus is our king. And really the rest of the psalm is all about our king. In verses 4 through 6, he says that our king can't tolerate wickedness, that they can't dwell with him, that they can't even stop by. He's going to kick them out. He's going to judge them. Then in verses 7 through 8, he says even though the wicked can't, he could, because he was following his ways. But even David recognized he only had access to God because of the multitude of his mercies. Then in verses 9 through 10, he calls on God to spoil the plans of his enemies. Not because they'd rebelled against him, but because they rebelled against the king, the one true king. But in verses 11 and 12, remember David's a refugee. You think about a refugee, think about somebody in raggedy clothes with their necessities on their back, having been ran out of their nation, away from their home by the enemy. It's just not a beautiful picture of one. None of us want to be one. But look at the beautiful picture that David draws of those who take refuge in the Lord. They are joyful, blessed, protected, and shielded. We are surrounded by enemies. Our modern culture is at war with Jesus Christ and his people and his ways. They want us to abandon our king so that we'll take refuge in their ways. And too many Christians have done that. But it's only when we take refuge in the Lord that we can find life. Focus on your king. Run to him. Don't let our culture deceive you. There is a safe haven. There is a refuge. Turn to him. Turn to your king. Thank you for opening your Bible with me. Make sure to like, comment, and share, and make sure to follow for more studies, more readings just like this one.